See, now we're going back. Now we're going back to the mind. See, this is how this works. If someone uses pride, if someone has pride in their heart and they make decisions just for the benefit of that pride that's in their heart, and they say, I'm gonna put my mind to something, they're using their mind as an action that's based on what's in their heart, that pride that's in their heart. Good luck prying that person off of their computer. This episode is being brought to you by AugustusV, where wisdom is the principal thing because class depends on it. Now, let's get back to the show. Alright, how's it going? Augustus here with you guys again. And man, I'm here with a special one for you guys. I don't get to do this every day, but before I even get started explaining what we're going to get into, big shout out, much respect to Geekdom 101 and the guest that he had on this episode that I seen scrolling his channel. For those of you that aren't DBZ fans, Dragon Ball Z fans, I'm not gonna say shame on you. I'm not gonna say shame on you, but you're probably a terrible person, and you need to do something about that. So, for those of you that don't know about Dragon Ball Z, if you want to learn anything about Dragon Ball Z, head over to Geekdom 101's channel, and man, you'll get a nice education on that series. Man, he does a very good job breaking everything down. So shout out to him for that, and shout out to him for this episode that he had. I was on his channel just recent, just a couple of hours ago, and I seen this amazing episode where he goes in on a philosophy that I believe many men don't deal with today, and I believe is a very important philosophy to deal with. But they dealt with pride, and not just pride, but I won't say it's fictional. It's a very literary, as discussed in the interview, a very spiritual based, very philosophical based force, and that's Saiyan pride, based on the race of the Dragon Ball Z race, the Saiyan race. So, not in an attempt to explain the series to those that don't know, I'm just gonna assume that you guys do know, and if you don't know, you'll still be able to keep up, because these are going to be some very generalized topics, but I'm going to make a strong attempt to keep it on the DBZ series, because I mean, at the end of the day, this is what brought this topic up in the first place. So Saiyan pride. Before we get into Saiyan pride, because we know this is a different thing. It's very legacy based, Saiyan pride. But pride, let's dig into pride for the but before we get into anything else. Now, pride is important. Pride is very important. Today, especially in the Western world, we see pride as a despicable matter, something that should be shunned, something that should be avoided. And there's reason for that. I'm going to go into that in a second. But in the Western world today, is something that you are taught to avoid, something that if someone flows in, then they automatically are attributed to being evil. See, that's how much of an extreme pride has been made out to be. Now, in the Eastern world, we know the philosophies differ. First of all, I want to start by saying this. In the Eastern world, the philosophy is much more ancient. Is much less of an experiment as philosophy is on the Western world today. And when I say Western world, I mean America being the first head influencer of the Western world, because of this little town within this little city by the name of Hollywood. See, so because of Hollywood's influence, there's been a very rapid change and evolution in our philosophy on the Western side of the world. And saying that to say this, our outlook, our perception of pride has been affected by that. So on the Eastern side of the world, sure, they have Bollywood, but it doesn't have anywhere near an effect as Hollywood does to the Western side of the world. And as a matter of fact, Bollywood doesn't have as much as an effect on the Eastern side of the world as Hollywood does on the Eastern side of the world. And we could get into that in a little bit. But saying all that to say this, Eastern philosophy hasn't changed too much. It's almost sacrilegious, it's almost blasphemy to taint Eastern philosophy, because it's so rooted and it's so close, it's so bonded with the culture. See, and there's nothing that ancient-minded folks detest more than the tainting, the pollution of their culture. See, now, with that alone, we know that excuse me, their philosophy for the Eastern world is going to be a little more rooted, a little more deeply rooted and deeply seated than philosophy in the Western world. Or in other words, there's more meaning to it. There's more meaning. Their outlook, how they pay attention to it, how they hold on to their beliefs. There's going to be more meaning to it because it's been around longer and there's less of an evolution to it. See. Now, on the Western world, our view on pride alone has changed very rapidly. In the Western world, we really pride ourselves on being the side of the hemisphere where many of the greatest thinkers in the world and in history have came out from. Greece, ancient Greece, that's considered the Western world. See, and from the birth of England, New England, or England, the birth of Britain, really, all the way down to England, all the way down to the Americas. We've all prided ourselves on having some kind of place with Western philosophy and the great thinkers of the Western world, starting with Homer and pretty much ending with Aristotle, just to play it safe. We could say Herodotus was a historian. He wasn't necessarily a great thinker, but you guys could kind of catch my drift. See, and if we're gonna go a little further than that, we could go down to Rome, ancient Rome, and you have Cicero. That was pretty much the end of the new thoughts concerning Western philosophy. When Cicero died, that was it for new thoughts of philosophy, at least until Jesus came. But that's a whole nother scenario. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. Now, Western philosophy from ancient times all the way up into modern history, US history if you will, it's changed very much. And there's been a small window, a small gap, a small window as to when the rapidity really changed. I mean, it really sped up in the change of thought. During World War I, I'll just put it like this. During World War I, pride was a good thing. Even in church, pride was considered a good thing. During World War II, pride was considered a good thing. It wasn't until after World War II where our women, and I don't mean to go Kevin Samuels on you guys, alright? But, I mean, you can only upset people when you have something to say, or really when you're saying something. See, so he upset a lot of people because he actually was saying something. So I don't mean to go Kevin Samuels on you guys, but there is some truth to what that man brought to the world. And one of those truths are, during the 60s, there was an act called the Women's Rights Act. This act alone changed how a lot of Americans, how America really viewed things. It was slowly, but it was surely. It was very sure. It's not hard to tell the transition. Around the 60s, you had a lot of romance movies. You had a lot of men catering to women in a different light that we haven't seen since Shakespeare. See? And the philosophy changed, because before then, remember, pride was good. But when the women's rights movement came into play, we had a lot of women complaining about not getting equal pay. We had a lot of women complaining about not being able to vote. We had a lot of women complaining about not being able to show skin and not being able to be sexy in public. Many things that really had nothing to do with the evolution of our society. Now, I'm not saying this to bash women or to, really hone on the women so much. We're talking about philosophy here. But there's some things that came with these agendas during this women's rights movement. And one thing that came with this was a change in philosophy. What we had was a lot of female philosophers stepping up and using terms like egotistical, narcissism, or narcissistic, being narcissistic, narcissism. See, and arrogance. That's another. And one of the main terms that we've seen being thrown around by the women philosophers in this day is pride. Now, it wasn't until this act that pride was seen as a bad thing. Why was pride seen as a bad thing during this movement? Because the bad guys during this movement were the men in society, the men that ran the society, the men that fought for the country. See? And the victims were the women. So, we heard a lot of women telling men that they're evil because they are egotistical. They're evil for having an ego. See? They're evil for being narcissistic. We have to remember, Alexander the Great was very narcissistic. Napoleon was very narcissistic. Hitler was very narcissistic. And some may say, well, why are you bringing up the villains? Why are you bringing up the bad guys? Why are you putting the bad guys in there too? Because there were many cases in history where we wished that the good guys were doing what the bad guys were doing. Many cases in history. See? So you can't rule them out. There's some qualities that we do need that the bad guys just mastered. See? And it just so happened to be the bad guys, the ones that had some internal issues that they just couldn't work out. And we could easily tie that to Vegeta, but we're gonna get to the Saiyan part of this term pride in a second. I just had to lay out this red carpet first. So, pride, throughout the history of the world, it was never seen as a negative thing. See, it was always something that needed to be balanced. See. It wasn't until our women told us that we were wrong for being egotistical, which shows you why we're not the ones with the insecurity issues. That shows you why women are the ones with the insecurity issues, because they think ego is evil. That shows you why we're not the ones with the commitment issues. I'm not talking about relationships, that's a whole nother ball game. I'm talking about just doing a task, just getting a task done, and focusing on one thing. Just focusing on one topic, just in conversation. We're not the ones with those issues. Why? Because we're narcissistic. We know how to focus on ourselves before we help someone else. We don't get distracted easily. See? But we're called evil for having these qualities. And we've been called evil so much. I'm not gonna go too long on this. Not too much more longer. But we've been called evil so much that the women have actually reversed the role. And now they're the narcissistic ones. Now they're the egotistical ones. Now they're the ones taking the jobs. See?
And don't want to take them back.
And they left the lady behind. They're doing all of these things at the expense of their ladyhood. So this shows you how rapid a philosophy or a thought process could change. How quickly a philosophy could change in the western side of the world. It changed very rapidly. I mean, we're talking in the matter of decades. From the 50s, the man was the head of the household. 60s, it was an equal household. 70s, the evolution, it started dwindling. By the time we got to the 80s, we know what happened. All those drugs came in. Now you're lucky to have a well-functioning household. But there were some survivors even in the midst of that. 90s, anything goes. And now we're in this new millennium where people are outright confused. People are confused, and the abominations are unrolling. Just a reminder of how fast, how quickly, how rapid a philosophy could change in this side of the world. That's the difference that we're talking about when we talk about Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy. There's no comparison. The West, unless we get back to Aristotle, unless we get back to Plato, unless we get back to at least Homer, come on. I mean, the poetry and the writings and all of those epics, unless we get back to that, there's no competition in Western philosophy versus Eastern. See, so I had to lay that out just so that we have a clear understanding how silly the term pride or the definition, our definition of pride is today. See, and by saying that, I hopefully, as the listeners, you guys can walk with me to an ancient time when we talk about the term pride, and we could kind of leave this silly stuff that we're doing today behind. Now, with that being said and done, with that being cleared up, when we talk about the term pride, there's levels to pride. Levels to it. Of course, we remember what Solomon the King Solomon said about pride. Pride goeth before the fall, but many people quote that and they don't finish the scripture. And a haughty spirit before destruction. I don't mean to go back on this, but it's been women that use that verse against us. Women through their husbands being the pastors have used that scripture against men for decades now. So if you quote that scripture, pride goeth before the fall, you have to finish it. And a haughty spirit before destruction. What's a haughty spirit? Someone that's overly emotional. See, that's how you know women have pushed that narrative on us. Because they're going to quote the pride part and use that against us, but they're not going to check themselves with the emotion part. I digress. So, pride, there's levels to it. Pride can go before destruction. Or pride can go before the fall, before a mistake. But this doesn't mean that pride in itself is a negative thing. That's what I love about Geekdom's episode on Vegeta and his pride, and when he actually evolves in his power levels based on his pride alone. Because there's levels to it, first of all, but it's not always necessarily an evil thing, because you could use your pride to help people. Imagine if someone's pride was in other people, if their pride was in the other people that they want to help. Imagine that. Imagine someone that prides themselves on their ministry and the people that need them, and the fact that they are there, sent there by God to help those people. See? Imagine that. So there's levels of pride. There's many arenas to pride as well. Many things that pride can be placed in. I mean, pride can be placed into a piece of wood if the person's crazy enough. But because of the outer limits, the potential to pride, I'm gonna narrow things down. I'm gonna narrow things down for us so that we could kind of gear this and kind of focus on the more necessary areas of pride that we deal with every day. So every person, I'm gonna break this down very quickly. Every person is made up of 4 different parts. Every person has 4 different sides to their self. They have their mind, they have their soul, they have their spirit, and they have their heart. Mind, soul, spirit, heart. That's the order too, from least to greatest. Your mind is the database of all knowledge. That's where you receive that's where you receive data, and you log data into this compartment that we call the mental realm, the mind. See, and we log these things in through 5 windows. These windows are your sight, your smell, your taste, your hearing, and your feeling, your nerves, or your physical senses, your nerves. So the mind takes data in from the environment, takes data from the environment through those 5 windows. That's the mind. That's what makes up the mind. The soul is the database of all of your feelings, all of your emotions. That's the emotional realm. That's where women love to play. Women just dwell there, and they never like leaving it. They will live there. If they had the choice to use logic or emotion, they'll use emotion every time. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just difference. It's just understanding the way of the woman. Then you have, deeper than the soul, you have the spirit. That's the database of all character. That's where your personality is formed. That's the database of all moral value. See? And then deeper than that, you have the heart. That's the database of all motives, of the modus operandi, the MO, the agendas. That's all in the heart. That's a big reason why God cares so much about the heart. It's all there. It's whatever you do, it has to be in your heart first. See, no one does something just out of their mind. No, something entered the mind, went through the other bridging gates, and whatever was in the heart already acted on whatever entered the mind. But it was always based on it has to get into the heart before anyone acts on it. Otherwise, it's not worth acting on. See, so why did I break all that down? Because these are the 4 most important arenas that someone can place their pride. These are the 4 most important arenas that pride can be placed in. Now, ego and pride, they're considered to be sisters in many cases. Why? Because this philosophy came from women. You have to remember this. It did not come from logical creatures. It came from emotional creatures. Ladies, I'm not putting you down. Please don't. I don't want you to feel that. But it's good for you to understand this, so that way you can understand any weaknesses that you may have, and strong reason for you to understand where you stand when it comes to other men, especially in discussions like this. But when it comes to pride and ego, they're not necessarily as synonymous as we may believe. Ego's a whole nother world. Ego deals with how someone sees their self. Ego deals with how someone sees their self. Does pride have something to do with how someone sees themselves also? Sure, of course. But pride is a decision. Pride is a decision. It's a choice. It's a choice to take a position on a thing. It's a choice to take a position on a matter. It's a position. When someone says, I pride myself on this thing, they're saying, I choose to live by this thing. I choose to die by it, if it came down to that. I choose. Ego's not so much of a choice as pride is. Someone could turn pride off very quickly. All they have to do is have it stripped from them. Example, great example, Vegeta and Goku. See, I'm walking you guys to this. I'm walking you guys to this because when we talk about something like pride, it's deeper. It's a lot deeper than what we were raised to believe. So ego's a whole nother world. Another word that women love calling men is arrogant. Arrogant. The reality is we haven't really used the term arrogant in its proper usage in decades. Decades. Because our philosophy hasn't came from men. I'm really emphasizing this. Really emphasizing this. Example, great example. Donald Trump. It's very interesting how many people didn't like this guy. They loved him before he got into office. Once he got into office, they just made a decision to hate this man. And I can imagine some are cringing just by me bringing up his name. But Trump was not arrogant in the least. The reason why people call Trump arrogant is because they didn't like how he approached people. They didn't like how it made them feel when he would speak to other people. They didn't like how it felt when he spoke to people. See? They didn't like how it felt when he was in office, having a Wall Streeter, business tycoon in office. So what did we call him? We called him prideful, we called him narcissistic, we called him everything that women call us for deciding to go out on our own and chase our legacy, to chase greatness. Everything we're called by our exes. Some of us get called these things by our own parents, by our mother. See? So this is what it comes down to. Now, if you notice, your daughter don't call you narcissistic now, do she? Your daughter don't do that. Your female cousins might. Your aunties might. They probably won't either though, because they're not in a position where they have to answer to you. But your daughters, your girls, they don't call you narcissistic. Why? Because they understand daddy has to do what daddy has to do. So, getting back to Trump, he was called arrogant because people didn't like how he addressed things. They didn't like how they felt. They didn't like the fact that he wasn't a smooth talker. They didn't like how it felt when he spoke. So they called him arrogant. When in reality, his actions, when this man said he was going to do something, he did it. And when he said something was going to be accomplished, it was accomplished. It was done. Not almost, not barely. It was completely accomplished. And in some cases, he went over and above. In some cases, he got things done quicker than he expected. That's not arrogance. That's not arrogance. Was he prideful? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, very prideful. Very prideful. Was he egotistical? Very egotistical. Was he narcissistic? Very narcissistic. I'm gonna upset some people when I say this, but so is God. You're not gonna meet someone more egotistical than God is. You're not gonna meet someone more narcissistic than God is. You're not gonna meet someone more prideful than God is. The only difference is his pride has no evil in it. His ego has no evil in it. His narcissism has no evil in it. There's no evil in it. So it's a lot easier to trust his pride and his ego and his narcissism. It's God. He has the right. When someone names themselves I am, they're letting you know from the jump, I care about myself. I have an ego. See? So, and you could imagine, you could imagine a lot of the new thinkers of today, how they cringe when they read the Old Testament. That's why they don't read the Old Testament anymore. They read the New, because they're afraid of these terms. They've been trained to shun narcissism. See? So, let's get into it. Let's get into the Saiyan side of this. Now that we know that pride isn't necessarily an evil thing, let's get into the Saiyan side of this. Vegeta is a fictional character in Dragon Ball Z. For those that don't know, many in my generation grew up watching this guy. I mean, just watching his evolution and watching his growth and the process of him coming from really a desolated race, a race that was destroyed, and him being the last of it, and just picking up the pieces to the puzzle by running into other relatives, distant relatives, like Goku, which we would find out is also named Kakarot by native name. See, but Vegeta, his pride is very interesting because the man does have some personal issues. He does have some issues at home, some personal issues. So it's very interesting because his pride and his personal issues are seldom separated. They're seldom detached from each other. Whenever you see Vegeta, you think about the evil that he's capable of doing. So when you see him exert any form of pride, the walls come up, the guards go up. And once more, I'm so thankful for this video that you did, Geekdom, on Vegeta evolving and using pride as a form of power, as a power form that actually enabled him to reach a new plateau that wasn't known. See, the man used pride to do it. Now, getting back to the levels of pride. Pride could be used in someone's mind. someone could use pride. Someone could have pride in their mind, in their head. Pride that's based on what they know. See, someone could take what they know and then develop pride in a thing, in a person, in a nation. See, in a thought in some cases. Some people are so social with it, they could become prideful in a thought. See. Then there's those that take it a little deeper. There's those that have prided or they've allowed something to come into their mind, and then they have accepted it in their mind and allowed it to affect their emotions, and pride was birthed in this thing emotionally. See, we see this every day. This is where all the anger issues come from. Someone prides their self on being real, on being a real individual, on being a real cat that comes from the hood, and you know, they came up this way. They were raised not to take crap from just anybody. They pride themselves on coming from somewhere that is hard to survive. They pride themselves on that. Now that's deeper than emotion, but emotionally, yeah, we can see the emotional impulse, the impulsive nature based on this pride. And to say emotional, for some people it's just a emotional thing, where if a person feels some type of way, then their behavior changes, their emotions change. See, they can be calm and collective in a discussion, but you bring one thing up, you offend one thing, one topic that they just so happen to pride themselves on emotionally, and they're raising their voice, they're clapping their hands. See, so this is what we're talking about here. Now, the next level that pride can be used in is character, is in spirit, is in who you are as a person. People often, when they use pride, is usually in this area. It's on who they are. That's not bad. That's not bad. And if you had a toe-to-toe between someone that prided themselves, if this was a pride battle and these two people were using pride as their source of power, and you had someone that prided themselves based on their thoughts, but then you have someone, the next person, their opponent, which prides themselves based on who they are, yeah, it's the who they are person, the who you are person that's gonna beat the what you think person. Mr. Who I Am is gonna beat Mr. What I Think when it comes to pride. Why? Because it's deeper. And the spirit realm is deeper than the mental realm. These are all spiritual matters, but spirit is just a term that's used for that deeper side of a person. We can say, you can use whatever term you want, personal realm, character realm, but I use spiritual realm. That's the one that and most people use. So the spiritual realm is deeper than the mental realm, and it's deeper than the emotional realm or the soul realm. See? Now, this is what we're going to deal with next. This is what I honestly believe Vegeta has his pride in. That Saiyan pride. Because we can see a lot of who he is in his pride. We see a lot of who he is, where he comes from, his legacy, that Saiyan kingship and royalty. That I'm a Saiyan prince. I'm the Saiyan prince, the prince of all Saiyans. And that shows you how much of the pride he has. His father's no longer here, and he still calls himself the prince. That shows you how much honor he has for his father, for his father's position as the king of all Saiyans. He doesn't even step up to the position of king in his own mind. He still calls himself a prince, the prince of all Saiyans. That's a thought. That's a heavy thought there. But pride allows someone to take something so deep. See? So we see the spiritual level of pride for Vegeta. But once we take it deeper, we go to the heart. Yeah, this is where I think Vegeta lives. This is where I believe Vegeta lives. In the heart, like I said, it deals with your agendas, with your motives. See, when someone has a specific thing in their heart, they act on it. Imagine if that thing was pride. Imagine if this person operated, if their heart was full of this pride. That's a dangerous person. And it's very important for that person to have all of the other qualities that's in their heart to be righteous. See, when someone makes decisions that simply benefit or protects or improves their pride, when someone makes decisions, when they have agendas and motives for the simple purpose of their pride, we're talking about a dangerous person. And whatever they put their mind to, see, now we're going back. Now we're going back to the mind. See, this is how this works. If someone uses pride, if someone has pride in their heart and they make decisions just for the benefit of that pride that's in their heart, and they say, I'm gonna put my mind to something. They're using their mind as an action that's based on what's in their heart. That pride that's in their heart. Good luck prying that person off of their computer. Good luck prying that person out of the books that they're reading and prying their hand from the pencil and pen and pad that they're working on. Good luck. That's what we're dealing with when we're dealing with Vegeta. That's what we're dealing with. This is a deep-seated pride. And he has the ability, by choice, to work on it, to really examine himself in training, through training, to get to the point where he can develop this pride, locate it, find out the weaknesses in it, find out where it usually causes him to fail, and then make the necessary adjustments. Now some may say, well, Ki doesn't work that way. You sure about that? Ki is nothing but energy. Ki is nothing but energy. It's nothing but life. That's all. And that's all energy is. Energy is a form of life. if energy is tied to a human body and is given a personality, or is given a is given a mental database, and is given a soul-based database, and is given a heart, that energy is going to become a person. See? That's why an AI robot has a mind. An AI robot has a body. An AI robot is given a database that gives it the ability to emulate emotions. See? And an AI robot has a heart. It's given a heart. It's all synthetic, and there's nothing near the AI that God has created, which is mankind. But nevertheless, it's still the same principle stands. See, so all key is energy, is life. We learned that from DBZ. See, and that's why you can actually feed on the life around you. That's why meditation for those that are in a forest is 10 times stronger. 20. I mean, there's really no limits to how much stronger. That meditation is much stronger for that person that's around life than it is for those that are surrounded by electronics and synthetic life. Can you emulate authentic God-given life through technology? Sure. But it's synthetic, so you have to deal with synthetic radiation versus being in a forest around real life and getting God-given radiation from the sun. See, that radiation from the sun isn't bad for you, it's good for you. It does good things for your body. That radiation that comes from electronics is not good for you, it's bad for you. It does bad things for your body. Very simple. Very simple. That's all life is, that's all energy is. So when we talk about Vegeta using pride that enters his mind, and if you think Vegeta doesn't use his mind much, I mean, just watch him as he's watching Goku fight. Just pay attention to all of the thought processes and all the mind jobs, all the mind screws that takes place as he's watching Goku fight. The entire time Goku's fighting, Vegeta's like, oh, how did he do this? Oh, I can't believe he did this. How could this weakling? We know how it goes. How could this weakling surpass me? How could this child surpass me? We've seen it all before. That's the mind, see? And that's him having a battle in his mind for his pride's sake. And in many cases, just simply in the mind, his pride is crushed. Over and over and over and over again when he's around Goku. And it starts with the mind. He experiences something from his sight. He sees it. He sees Goku moving at the speed of light. To him, to Vegeta, is the speed of light. He can't even keep up in some cases. And he sees that. It goes into the mind. He battles with it in his mind. He accepts this fact in his mind. He accepts this reality that he sees. It affects him emotionally. Now the pride in his emotions, it stirs up anger. It goes deeper now. It goes to who he is as a Saiyan. How could this weakling surpass the Prince of all Saiyans? Then it goes deeper. It goes into his motives and his emotion. Not emotions. It goes into his heart, into his motives and his agenda. He says, I'm not gonna let this guy die by a foe. I can't let him die. He's a pipsqueak. He's a brat, and he's been a nuisance to me ever since I met him. But I can't let him die because he's the only way that I'm going to reach a higher plateau. He's the only way that I'm going to be able to perfect this thing I call Saiyan pride. For the listeners, I'm sorry that I took long to get to that point, but you must understand, today pride means something completely different than it used to. And I use this because I already had it in my plans to deal with pride in my library. That's, I'm not gonna say when that's coming out, but I'm definitely gonna jump on that, especially quicker now. But I really advise and encourage many of you men listening. Don't shun pride. Don't shun it. Don't put it under a table. Don't feel bad for having pride. Perfect it. Perfect pride. And here's my best advice. Put your pride into the best place you could put pride. That's in God. Put your pride into God. There's no better place for a man to put his pride than into God. You put pride anywhere else, it's gonna get crushed. And you're gonna have to take the Vegeta route and just get crushed and then work on it. Crushed and work on it. Then crushed and worked on it. Just put your pride into God. Just rocket past everyone else that's falling and stumbling to get where they want to be. Just rocket past them. Just put it into God. And for those that don't believe in God, those that don't have a relationship with God, first I adjure you, I please, I beckon thee to get a relationship with God. But if you're not there, put it in the second best thing to putting your pride into God. Put your pride into other people. Put your pride into life. The highest life form on this earth is people. So the second best thing that you could put your pride into, other than God, or the second best thing to God that you could put your pride into is people. Put your pride into people. See, when you're in the gym, when you're at work, in the office, when you're in the home around your wife, put your pride into other people. Whether it's your kids, your grandkids, put your pride into them. And in the fact that you're doing something, or you are there for them, put pride into that. Put pride into that. See. This is what it's all about. This is what pride. This is how pride can benefit. It's not a bad thing. When Solomon said pride comes before the fall, you have to connect it with the second part of that verse. Pride goeth before the fall, and a haughty spirit before destruction. That's why Vegeta keeps falling, because pride comes before the fall. Doesn't mean that pride is bad. It's just that where Vegeta puts his pride, he's going to fall. He's going to have to fall to get better. Where most people put their pride, where most men put their pride, they're going to fall. Because it's the only way that they're going to get better, based on where they put their pride in. If you put your pride in God, you won't have to fall. You put your pride in other things, anything other than God, you're gonna fall. See? But that's not so scary. That's not so bad of a thing, considering that in many things that you do, you have to fall. and get back up before you could perfect it. So some are okay with that. Some might be okay with the fact that they're gonna fall. That's okay. Me, I like rocketing past people. I like that. I prefer that route. Kind of like Goku. See, because we have to remember, this is the philosophy of Saiyan pride, not Vegeta pride. So we got to deal with Goku too. And then I'm gonna wrap this up. But Vegeta puts his pride in himself. Puts his pride into what his father has taught him, and really programmed him to believe, and the legacy that he programmed him to carry on. Vegeta puts his pride in a race. A very capable race. But that's a thing. It's a thing based on people. It is a people, but it's not necessarily the people in particular. It's the fact that they're just a part of this race. Oh, wait a minute. What else does that make Vegeta? He's not just a narcissist, he's a racist too. See? That's why we can't focus on this philosophy that's been given to us by our women. We have to step up as men. We have to go back. We have to research things ourselves. We have to look into these matters and say, is someone really arrogant just because they're saying what they're able to do? Someone really arrogant because of that? See? And in many cases, you don't even have to research it. You just use common sense. You just separate yourself from everybody and then just use common sense. See? So Vegeta, he prides himself in his race. Goku, on the other hand, he prides himself on other people. He prides himself on the universe, on life. That's why he's the one that was given the spirit bomb. That's why he can do the spirit bomb and has mastered it, because his personality allows him to feed off of all of life that he can contact spiritually, that he can get in touch with spiritually. That's a clear sign of where he puts his pride. He puts his pride into other people. But, like I said, if you put your pride into anything other than God, you're gonna fall. And that's why sometimes even Goku, yes, even Goku, in this fictional story that's based on spiritual matters. I don't care if it's fictional. Once it's spiritual, that's it. That's higher than some factual stories. See, in my book, once it becomes spiritual. But like I said, Goku, he puts his pride into other people, but because he doesn't put his pride in God, it causes him to fall from time to time, and sometimes his pride gets the best of him. Yeah, I said it. I said it. Sometimes Goku's pride gets the best of him. Sometimes this guy that's about to annihilate the planet, annihilate the universe, Goku will allow him to live. Goku will go easy on him in battle, just to see if this guy can push him to his outer limits. He'll take on the fight instead of killing a foe. He will fight with the foe just to see how powerful he is. Because sometimes, yeah, his pride gets the best of him. I think I've stressed it enough why we need to put our pride into God. But for those that, you have deep-seated issues with God, hey, I'm gonna let you have that. I'm not gonna try to turn you away from that. That's some stuff you're dealing with. And it's up to you to man up and go to God to deal with that. You know, I'll let you deal with that on your own merit. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna say anything against you concerning that. But there are other places to put your pride. And just understand, if you don't have things together with God and you use this thing we call pride, you're gonna fall. Just know that going into whatever you're going into. Don't put your pride into cars. Don't put your pride into things. Put your pride into God, and if you can't do that, put your pride into the next best thing, other people. Because in some cases, God will grace you just for putting your pride into other people. He said to his to his servants at one point, he said, if you feed the hungry, I'm gonna see it as if I was hungry and you fed me. If you clothe the clothless, I'm gonna see it as if I was clothless and you clothed me. If you visit someone in prison that's wrongfully there, I'm gonna see it as if I was wrongfully in prison and you visited me. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. So, Geekdom 101, once more, thank you for the topic. I plan to do more based on your videos. I don't think this is going to be the last one, especially if you do more interviews like that. For the listeners, right now, this is the OG phase. This is where all the day ones and all the OGs are chiming into the channel. So make sure you share, make sure you like, subscribe, all that. And love you guys. Stay wise.